What if Darth Vader survived? Let's start the story on the Death Star. Lando Calrissian and the rebels have just started a chain reaction that will destroy the battle station, and Luke is hurrying to get Vader off. In Return of the Jedi, Vader succumbs to death as he desired to see his son one last time by taking his helmet off, but in this story, he keeps his helmet on and the two get off on a shuttle to safety. They narrowly escape the Death Star before its destruction and are safe beyond the blast radius. Luke is beyond happy. He was finally able to redeem his father and get him to safety away from the clutches of Palpatine. He has incredible friends, and now his father has returned. The two go back to Endor where Leia awaits for her brother to land. However, when Luke steps out of the shuttle, he was joined by Lord Vader, their most infamous adversary. As Leia begins to panic, Luke attempts to reassure her that Vader has turned back to the light and that their father is safe. In Luke's mind, Leia would feel the same as he did and believe they could begin working on getting Vader a full pardon. However, Leia was not at all pleased. In her mind, her father was dead, and it was because of Vader who blew him up when the Empire destroyed Alderaan. Leia couldn't forgive Vader's atrocities and believed he should be imprisoned and executed. She only felt hate. Luke tried to reason with her, and Anakin attempted to reach out to his daughter, but it was no use. She has made up her mind. She tells Luke to arrest Vader or the rebellion will be forced to bring him in. Luke couldn't believe what he was hearing and said that Anakin wasn't going anywhere. As Leia calls for assistance, Luke tells his father to get on the ship as they quickly head back for space. Leia's emotions had gotten the better of her, but she was certain in her decision. She informed their fighters to follow them, but it was too late. Luke plugged in hyperspace coordinates and jumped to another system. Luke would take his father to Dagobah. It was the only place he could think of where they would be safe from the rebellion. This allowed them to lay low and figure out their next move. The priority was healing Vader. His suit was agonizing, and he was in desperate need of a far less battle-orientated suit. His armor was designed by the Emperor to cause him pain and suffering, further fueling his drive for the dark side. This was counterintuitive when he was now trying to be good. Anakin tells Luke that there will be equipment and droids back in his castle on Mustafar to help him. They travel there at once, entering the fiery pit, and it was the first time Anakin had been here when he wasn't consumed by the dark side. Whilst Anakin enters his much needed Bacta tank, Luke communicates with the droids and ensures they are able to get Vader safely from one suit to the other. The droids assure Master Luke that they have everything they need. Anakin's new suit was much more comfortable, adorned in a white alloy. He didn't have hundreds of little needles digging into his skin, but instead a smooth interior comforting his skin. His helmet was removed and placed with a simple respirator over his mouth. His eyes and head were free. It is stated in canon that one of the things holding Vader back from healing was the dark side, as the Force kept him in pain to further fuel his strength. When he turned back to the light, this stopped, and over time Anakin would slowly heal, perhaps even to the point where he could fully remove his helmet. With his new suit, Anakin was free. Anakin has to focus on being a father and making up for lost time. Ever since he turned back to the light a few days ago, Luke and him hadn't actually spoken. Anakin approaches his son and requests to take him somewhere. Luke asks where they are going, but Anakin doesn't answer. He needs to show him, not tell him. They travel to the lush world of Naboo, a place where Anakin would come a lot as Vader. They land on the outskirts of Theed, where they will travel to the tomb and graveyard of Padme Amidala. Anakin stares at the grave as tears begin to weld in his eyes. He explains to his son that this is the grave of his mother, Padme, the love of his life. Luke was speechless. Anakin explains that he came here many times over the years. Her death was his fault, and he has lived with the regret of his actions every day since then. The elder Skywalker drops to his knees and places his hand onto the grave. He apologizes to Padme for everything and promises her in this moment that he will make things right and become the father he always told her he would be. Luke was shocked how quickly Vader had come back. He began to realize who he was. A broken man who lost the people he cared about, and he turned his sadness into anger. Luke places his hand on Anakin's shoulder and says, "It's alright, Dad." The Jedi Knight had forgiven his father and was pleased that he was attempting to make things right. The two stayed there for a while, and Anakin shared many stories from the past. He explained how Anakin and Padme met when they were only 9 years old, but then reconnected a decade later when the Jedi Council sent him on a mission to Naboo. Luke was curious about the Jedi and how they operated. He told his father he was trained by Yoda and was there when he passed away. In a funny way, Anakin was curious how Yoda had survived all these years after Order 66, but was glad he wasn't alone in the end. Anakin takes Luke to different parts of his past, like the lake house on Naboo where his parents got married, and as Anakin went to take him to Tatooine, Luke explained that he grew up with Owen and Bru Lars. This made Anakin smile. For the first time in forever, these two were getting along and truly had a father-son connection. The two sat down by Anakin's mother's grave as they decided what to do next. The answer was obvious to both of them, but it was a daunting task. They had to rebuild the Jedi Order. If they didn't begin this endeavor, then no one would. They traveled to the planet Ossus and began constructing a temple. The same planet and temple that Din Djarin travels to in search of Grogu. Anakin would continue Luke's training. Even though Luke defeated him on the Death Star, it was clear that Anakin was the more experienced Force user. He instructed him in the ways of the old Jedi, teaching him various abilities and skills that he employed during the Clone Wars. Learning about the Clone Wars was one of Luke's favorite things. He found the conflict fascinating. Luke became more powerful under Anakin's teachings, and his connection to the Force flourished. When their temple began to make progress, they began the endeavor of finding students. This was going to be a difficult task. They still had to remain hidden from the New Republic. Leia had been sending out scout teams and probes in hopes of finding them, but to no avail. Anakin knew that the Emperor had kept the Jedi holocrons that detailed the children of the Force. Palpatine had various long-term plans, and one of them was to create an entire Force-sensitive army with the children of the Force. For Anakin and Luke to get this holocron, they would need to sneak back into Coruscant and go to the old Jedi Temple. This was a risky idea, but the new Jedi Order would go nowhere if they didn't do this. Using security codes, they sneak onto the surface and are able to enter the temple undetected. However, as they sneak throughout the corridors, they see Leia in the distance. Vader thought this was curious and realized that she must have taken over Palpatine's office. This hurt Luke especially. Prior to the Death Star's explosion, Leia was his best friend. Now she acted like he was nothing to her. As they continue to watch her, they see Han arriving holding their baby, little Ben Solo. Anakin's heart ached as he looked upon their first grandson, knowing that he couldn't meet him. The two quickly find the holocron hidden deep within the temple. Anakin was able to direct Luke throughout the temple after his time as a Jedi in these halls, allowing for an easy escape. The holocron detailed children from all walks of life. They had plenty of options now. They traversed the galaxy and received the first few students for their order. Slowly, Anakin was righting his wrongs. The beginning of this order was a massive moment. Luke and Anakin both began as teachers, instructing the children whose ages ranged from 2 to 5 years old in the ways of the Force. They began with only one class of 15 students, but after a while, their numbers were going far greater, and they knew that they needed more teachers than just them. One night, as Luke and his father sat by a fire, they pondered who could help them teach. But just as they did this, the Force ghosts of Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon appear before them. This was the first time they had shown themselves before Anakin, but Luke had been having many conversations with them over the years. They announce that they can see Anakin is on the right path to redemption and that his intentions are pure. Anakin gets on his knees and begs for forgiveness. He apologizes to Obi-Wan for everything and cries before Qui-Gon, saying he must be ashamed of the man he's become. But Yoda tells Skywalker to stand. He can't change the past, but he will change the future. He has an opportunity to lead the new Jedi Order of the galaxy. Anakin has tears in his eyes. Qui-Gon tells him that he is the chosen one. Even when he became Darth Vader, he was still the chosen one. It just took Luke to bring him back for him to find his old proper ways. From the next day, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Qui-Gon became teachers in the Order, appearing as mystical Force ghosts for every lesson and instructing the students. Word of this new Jedi Order in the galaxy began to spread throughout the New Republic, and people didn't really believe it. But Leia did, and she knew it was Luke and Vader. Ahsoka Tano would hear these reports and made her way to Ossus, where she reunited with Anakin. This was an incredible reunion, and Anakin was beyond happy to see her, thinking that she was dead. Ahsoka joined their order, and after decades of pain, finally had a home again. The new Jedi Order was succeeding, and their students were slowly becoming proficient in the Force. There was not enough masters yet for each student to get paired one-on-one, but when the next generation of Jedi are trained, there will be. As for Luke, he would eventually meet and fall in love with Mara Jade, a Force-sensitive being who was once a pupil to the dark side in Palpatine's empire, but after meeting Luke, she turned back to the light. Their love story was pure, and she too joined them on Ossus and would join the Order. Luke trained her personally, and she grew powerful. The first High Jedi Council consisted of Anakin, Ahsoka, Mara Jade, and Luke, who was given the title of Grand Master. After decades of struggle and pain, Anakin was finally granted the rank of Master. Luke and Mara Jade would have 3 children who were welcomed into the Order and trained as Jedi. This new order wasn't so dogmatic and strict on attachments, but instead promoted controlling your own attachments and not letting them consume you. They also stayed entirely out of politics and focused on being peacekeepers, as this was their downfall last time. Eventually, 15 years after the destruction of the Empire, Leia Organa found her brother and father on the planet Ossus. However, what she found shocked her. At this point, the Order had grown to over 100 Jedi, whose ages ranged from 3 to 20 years old. At the top of the Order was her father Anakin, teaching and inspiring the youth to be good and to learn from his mistakes. They didn't hide who Vader was in the past, but instead used it as a learning curve for the upcoming Jedi. Leia was absolutely astounded and realized that she had made a mistake. Her father had redeemed himself, and she had been an angry daughter for far too long. She had missed out on so much, including her brother's new family and wife. When she was greeted by Luke, she expected them to tell her to leave and that they didn't want her here, but instead, they showed her around the temple and informed her of everything they were doing. In this moment, she forgave Anakin and Luke and asked for forgiveness herself. She told them when she returns to the New Republic, she will make a motion in the Senate to have the Jedi Order reinstated as protectors of the galaxy and to work alongside the Senate. Unfortunately, the galaxy couldn't forgive Vader for what he has done, so Leia kept his name out of all negotiations. In time, the Jedi Order were prospering again and were sent out on missions throughout the galaxy to help those in need. Leia, Han, and Chewie would move to Ossus, where they would be with their family and friends. When they arrived, Anakin saw R2 for the first time in over 3 decades. Luke and Mara Jade would help train Leia and Ben Solo to understand the Force. All was right in the galaxy. Anakin had been redeemed, his children were safe and happy, and the Jedi Order, once destroyed, had finally been rebuilt and would prosper for many generations to come. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Vader Spoke to Padme's Force Ghost and What If Anakin Killed Obi-Wan on Mustafar. Please consider becoming a member for $1 a month, it really helps the channel out. I hope you all enjoyed, and may the Force be with you.